Hey, y'all, buckle up because today I've got an absolute powerhouse joining us. Dr. Nerissa Bauer isn't just your average pediatrician. Oh, no, no. She is a board certified behavioral pediatrician, an ADHD advocate, and a parenting expert who has made it her mission to help families actually understand their neurodivergent kiddos instead of just surviving in the chaos. Dr. Bauer is the brains behind Let's Talk Kids Health, where she takes all the complicated medical jargon and translates it into the real world, parent friendly advice that we all need. She's been featured in academic journals, major media, and national conferences. And if that weren't impressive enough, she also creates innovative parenting courses that actually work because let's be honest, ADHD parenting requires so much more than just sticker charts and wishful thinking. Her work is all about connection over correction, and she's here to help us unpack the good, the bad, and the beautifully messy parts of raising ADHD kids. So grab your coffee or something stronger, I promise I won't judge, and let's welcome the incredible Dr. Nerissa Bauer. Dr. Bauer, thank you so much for being here. Would you mind to tell our listeners a little bit about you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Dr. Nerissa Bauer. I'm a behavioral pediatrician, and I'm also CEO of Let's Talk Kids Health, creator of Teach Me ADHD. I'm calling in from Carmel, Indiana, and I am a pediatrician. I have ADHD of myself, and I have two kids, one graduating senior this year and a freshman in high school.
No way, you look so young.
I just turned 50 this year, so
No way.
yes.
Oh my goodness, you look fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
So, one icebreaker, and then we will get down to business. If you could rename ADHD, what would you rename it and why?
Oh my goodness. I love this question. Thank you so much. Um, I actually did a reel about this because I feel like ADHD in general, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a terrible name. And what I did was task myself and my team here at headquarters to come up with positive words that were ADHD that started with those letters. And so for me, it would be adventurous, hyper focused, uh, also, let's see. I like, oh, dancing. I like dancing.
Mm.
And also driven. Um Sometimes that's a conundrum though, I think,
Yeah,
when you think about ADHD, because that procrastination does kick in. And whenever people are like, you can't have ADHD, you've done so much. I'm like, for every like one thing that I've carried across the finish line, there are at least 10 to 15 more that I've started or thought of, but just don't have the energy for. So they just don't see that.
I feel that so much. Years before, when my son was too young to even know what ADHD was, we labeled it fast brain. So now we
Oh,
are the household of the fast brain club. So that's what it's called in my home.
oh, I love it. I love it.
So I was going to ask what brought you to this field, but I'm guessing it is your own personal diagnosis.
Yeah, well, you know what? My diagnosis wasn't until 3 years ago. I mean, February of 22. Yeah, I guess that would be 3 years ago. Um, but I guess in my heart of hearts, I kind of just always kind of gravitated towards those types of individuals. Um, and I just, when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. I mean, I knew I loved kids and I loved to like engage with them. But my parents are first generation from the Philippines, and they were like, "That's great, but you won't make any money." And and so, can you figure out something else you want to do? And my mom was a nurse. And so I, went to college first as an signed up to be a nursing major, but then I quickly changed gears into psychology, and then with the idea that I was going to go into medical school. But it was perfect because later I found out that pediatrician, the root of that is to teach. And that's absolutely what I love about pediatrics is helping support families from infancy all the way to young adulthood to understand what's going on. Now, as a behavioral pediatrician, I no longer treat rashes or asthma or anything like that. I just focus on ADHD, anxiety, depression, and parenting issues. But similar idea is that, I look at the big picture and look at the whole picture. And so I think a lot of what I do comes from that wish and desire to help equip families with as much information as possible because it doesn't feel great when you don't know what to expect. You go to the mechanic and you don't understand what's going on or, whatever. It's kind of similar to that where you get a lot of jargon and a lot of times kids don't understand a lot of the big words that they're hearing being tossed around. And so I thought it was my duty to help, empower and engage those kids at any age they are. Because if they're going to see me, I want them to feel comfortable talking to me about what's going on. Even though I may have to adapt, child-friendly phrases and all of that, I feel it's so important to talk directly to them and not just to the parents about them.
Mm. I love that so much for that same reason. Up until now, we haven't really allowed my son into rooms about him. And I know that seems counterproductive, but I don't want him to sit there and feel like we're talking about him in front of him and him not be included or understand. So I understand that. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a lot of times what in the what work I do, I get to sort of observe a lot. And that's why when I meet kids for the first time, I introduce myself as Dr. Bauer, but I say, you know what, I'm the type of doctor who doesn't give shots. And even though I'm a doctor, I'm more like a detective. I have to sort of sit back, listen, collect facts, not jump to conclusions, and observe what's going on. So together, we just need to kind of talk about things so that I can do the detective work I need to do to help us all understand what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important if we set the stage the right way when we're sort of interacting with our littles and our young kids about this journey, it has a long way to go in setting the tone for future interactions.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. I love that so much. So before I was going to go dive right into ADHD parenting, but I kind of want to know what it's like for you as a woman later diagnosed in life.
yeah. So it's interesting because obviously I know a lot about ADHD. This is kind of the work that I do day in and day out. I've been helping support kids and families with ADHD, learning to live with it. Um, but I will say, when I got the diagnosis, I would say I was surprised, but not really. I kind of had that feeling like, oh my gosh, really? Oh, yeah, of course. Um, but it was so interesting. Like I remember the minute I got off the phone with the psychologist and who happened to be a colleague of mine, and I sort of just explained what was going on. My son had formally got diagnosed because I'm in that instance, I was not mom, I was mom and not, Dr. Bauer.
Yeah.
Um, and after thinking about it, I was like, I should probably get tested, because we know that ADHD runs in families. Um, so I did, but I asked the psychologist if she would feel comfortable because she knew me, like to do that work. And she said, absolutely. And I remember getting off the phone because it was during, we were still doing virtual then, and then going over to my husband and saying, I have ADHD. And I just started crying. I mean,
Mm.
I was crying for, not because having ADHD is a terrible thing. It's because I was crying for all the years that I lost for having support
Mhm.
for myself. It's kind of like I started grieving for the times that I remember being, in the classroom and struggling or like figuring like, feeling like I was always working harder than everybody else. And hearing that quiet negative voice in my head, like, oh, you're not going to get why people are going to wonder why you're a doctor, because I always, had that feeling like I'm just working so hard. I feel like nobody has to work as hard as I do to get this, information.
Mm.
And I guess I had to go through that grieving process a little bit, I wished that I could have found out sooner so I could have gotten the supports that I actually needed. I mean, here I was already past medical school and doing all the things. I had my own practice already. So, I made it, but how much more easier or how much more compassion would I have had for myself
Mm.
sooner if I had just gotten that identification earlier in my life. So I think that's partly why I'm so passionate about it. Now, especially with the young kids, I'm like, you are so lucky to be able to understand how your brain works now,
Yes.
because all you need to do and remember is to dream big because whatever you want is possible. And let's just learn how to work with that brain of yours. You've got this. You're smart. You're capable. And I just want kids to feel that way.
Yeah. Thank you so
So,
much for sharing your personal story.
yeah, of course. Of course.
I love that dream big. Our story is unlike, it's so common, in this category, but my son struggles academically. And I am really trying to boost him up to let him know that, school may be a struggle, but one day you can be so successful. So every Sunday night, I read him a story of a millionaire or billionaire or extremely successful person who has ADHD just to show him what's possible. Right now it may be hard, but one day the outside of the box thinking is going to take you so far.
Yes.
So I love that you said that part.
Yes. I mean, and it's true. I mean, I know that sometimes it doesn't feel good. I mean, there's challenges, obviously, and we're not here to, kind of minimize those things, but I truly believe that when kids and families have the knowledge and the tools, they can get through it all together and get to the other side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to say that life isn't going to be hard. It will be hard. And there are going to be challenges when you have a brain that thinks and learns differently. But, I just want kids that to know that they're not alone. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that, I mean, we just have to learn how to harness that. And when you have a parent who is actively working and supporting that child in a child-friendly way, I mean, you can both reach for anything
Yeah.
and get to the other side.
Yeah. Ugh, I love that so much. So I have to know, I kind of ask all of the people I ask to come on in the expert series, what is one of the common misconceptions that you run across that parents believe about ADHD that is a complete myth or not anything that we need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty, but I think one of them is the one that I faced myself again, like being a female and being a physician and getting a late diagnosis of ADHD, people saying, you can't have ADHD. I mean, look at all you've done, right?
Mm.
Um, I find that incredibly important to highlight because what we're learning about ADHD in women and girls in particular, that it can coexist with anxiety, depression. Females tend to mask symptoms. We're people pleasers in general. And so it we can sort of look like, we're having those episodes where we're kind of zoning out or we're not like really engaged, but then we kind of like can bring it back and be like, yes, we make good eye contact. And,
Yeah.
and so we can mask all these things, but secretly inside we're like, what the heck? Just what are we supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And having that inner like anxiety about like, I don't even know what's important here to be focusing on. So I think it's important to know that when somebody says they have ADHD, is to not, kind of say, really?
Mm.
I mean, I think, as we start to spread awareness about what ADHD is and how it can look differently in all people, there's a spectrum of symptoms that we don't want to like discount how someone is feeling,
Yeah.
right? So it's really important if you have any concern whether or not you have ADHD or your child or whoever in your life, I think it's important that they be sent to someone who specializes in this to get an assessment.
Yeah.
So you can't judge a book by its cover, you know.
Yes, that is so true. That is a common theme. And maybe it's because I am raising a boy who is hyperactive and impulsive, but it does seem like girls go so much more undiagnosed and even unnoticed in most cases. Is that something that you run across?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And so many younger women, adults, they have gone through their lives maybe first, being treated for anxiety and depression first, which is commonly co-occurring, but it can mimic ADHD as well. So again, I think I've heard from colleagues who treat adults, because I'm a behavioral pediatrician, but I hear from other colleagues who treat adults that that's very common to have someone who they're seeing for anxiety, depression, and have tried lots of different medication for those things and still not quite getting the symptom relief they need, and then come to find out that they actually have ADHD as well. And when they get on the right medication and the right supports, their life is so much better.
Mm.
So,
Man, that makes so much sense as a 40-year-old woman.
you do not look like you're 40. So,
I am 40. I actually just turned 40, and I thought,
oh,
I don't know, 20-year-old me thought that 40 would be like, but it's actually like my favorite time that I've ever lived. So don't tell the 20-year-olds that. Let them keep, dreading it, but it only gets better each decade.
it really does. It really does. And I like think back, I just had a girls' trip with my cousins, and I'm the first of the cousins to turn 50.
Mm,
But we were talking about how, like, wow, can you imagine? Like, we're the age that our parents were when we
mm.
were this, and they seem so old, and we don't feel old right now. Like, we feel like we're in the prime of our lives.
I
So it's very
know.
true.
I know. It's like each decade, I raise the bar. Like, what is old? I just keep going further and further up. But that's good though, so I'll take that.
Yes.
So, running in the same field, what is one wish that you had that every parent who's raising a child with ADHD knew or that they did in their parenting?
Wow, what a great question. Um, so I think the one thing, I have to think about that, is first of all, don't take things personally. I think it's one of the things that we have to remember is that ADHD is not a behavior problem, it's an executive function issue. And the frontal lobes of anybody's brain is still developing into their late 20s. So 25 is about the number that we all throw out. However, we know that people with ADHD, we have lagging skills. And so on paper, they could be 10, but functioning more like a 7-year-old. So it can lead to a lot of frustration, especially when, you can see your child can focus and concentrate so well without any problem on like Minecraft or Roblox. And when you ask them to kind of come to the table or wash their hands or pick up their stuff, they just can't do it. It can be really frustrating, obviously. And so, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation, is what I often tell parents. But in those moments of exasperation, if you can remind yourself that, okay, this is my child telling me without so many words that they need my help. So, how can I take a step back and teach this to them in the way they need so that they can get practice to get better? Right? I mean, it's kind of like the same as when our kids are first learning how to walk. We never get mad at them for falling down, right? We're like, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, look at you. You did, you can do it again, right? So that's kind of the mindset we have to adapt when we're parenting kids with ADHD, the long view, the marathon view. Like, okay, we've tripped again. Um, but I'm here to tell you, I hear it, I know it, I live it, I know it can be really frustrating. So I'm not trying to discount that at all. But it's more that we have to learn to meet our kids where they are with as much compassion because they're feeling it too. They know that, if they
Yeah.
would, they could. They would.
Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today. That is an unexpected answer to that question, but probably the reminder that I need the most is don't take it personal. I love that. So, what are practical strategies that you teach parents so that they can better support their kiddos?
Yeah. Gosh, how long do you have? So the first one is always, again, learning as much as you can about ADHD, so that way you can um, come at your child with the compassion they need and meet them where they are and recognize those lagging skills. Okay. Second is visual, like externalizing time. I mean, the ADHD brain is the here and now, and it can't often remember the what happened before or what will happen in the
Yeah,
future. It is living in the moment. It is those dopamine hits that it sort of is just kind of like, this is what I need
yeah,
right now. And so anytime we can externalize time, like with visual timers, and I usually have one here, but it's across the way over there, so I'm not going to get up to get it. But visual timers where kids can see passage of time can help, in addition to pairing it with the verbal cues and eye contact. But, anytime that we can help kids reverse engineer and learn the steps, because I know that mornings getting out, out of the house is one of the most stressful periods of time for families. So as much as possible, trying to backtrack and reverse engineer that and be like, okay, like how long do we really need for all of these things? How else can we streamline things like a launching pad? What can we do the night before to kind of streamline all these other things? And how can I cue my child? But also having an honest conversation with them and saying, buddy, it is so hard in the mornings to get out the door, and I don't like screaming at you. I know you don't like it when you're feeling this way. We got to learn how to work
mhm,
together. So let's pick like the three touch points where we're gonna like absolutely work on, which can help make things go better, and sit down and talk to them about it. I mean, that's what Teach Me ADHD is all about. It's giving kids information, but then allowing them the time and the safe space to reflect on that. Because I think sometimes we don't necessarily think to talk to our kids
mm,
directly because we think, oh, they won't know. But it like that's such an important piece of getting their
yeah,
buy-in, is to help them understand like why things should be this way, not just because I told you so, right? But I think if we can learn to build in the time to be like, okay, gosh, this is not, this is not going well. I don't like it, you don't like it. Like, what can we do together? And let's try those little tweaks in what we do already and see, and let's do a little experiment. Let's see what happens tomorrow morning when we do it this way. Or let's do a practice run right now and see if we can beat the timer. So again, anything that you can do to externalize that time, communicate and speak, directly to your child about the issues, um, and bring them on board is going to be important. And then lastly, I guess if I had to choose one more, I'm sorry, you said one,
you're
but
fine. Soaking
uh,
it all up.
yeah, but with getting back to ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, terrible
Mhm,
name, as we said initially, because it doesn't encapsulate all the things, and it's not a disorder. I mean, there's so many people with ADHD, it's like a normal variant in the population.
yeah,
So, like I don't want kids to think that there's something wrong with them. But emotion is such a big thing. Emotion regulation is such a big piece of this that's not even in the name. And so, when it comes to kids having meltdowns or getting really frustrated and going from 0 to 60, I think the most important thing in the moment to remember is to connect before
mm,
compliance. You know, it's kind of like talking off someone from the ledge. You got to just like both of you both have to be in a good place to get right movement. But in that moment, it doesn't matter. Like if your child is already dysregulated, whatever you are saying is probably not making it
Yeah.
better. So again, we just need to like be like, okay, this is no longer about the shoes. It's about like my child is struggling. I need to connect with him first
Yeah.
to get him back to
Yes.
baseline, you know?
Yes. So much yes. Yes. We used to do a timeout and not like a punishment, just so that we could, cool off. And then I was like, man, it seems like I'm sending him away to process these feelings by himself, and like those feelings aren't allowed. So I was like, let's do a time in where we literally just sit and we're both frustrated and we're quiet. And it's so magical because then we can regulate and then we don't say those hurtful things. And I'm like, and I think parents forget, when your child is dysregulated, you are most likely also completely dysregulated. You need just as much cooling off period as they do.
Yes, yes, for sure. And that's so beautiful. I mean, the timeout versus time in piece. I mean, even just allowing him to be in that room with you and you're co-regulating together, it's
Yeah.
so powerful. You
Mm.
know, as parents, I think we forget that that's our most powerful tool at our disposal is ourselves modeling the appropriate ways to do things, whether that's reteaching them for the 700th time,
Yeah.
how to bag or how to like clean up their dishes or whatever. I mean, it's important to know that your kids look to you as their first teachers in this game of life, right? I mean, they look to you and your actions speak so much louder than words sometimes, right? And sometimes when I tell parents that, they're like, "Oh man, I'm never off then." I'm like, "No, you aren't." But they see the good, the not so good, and everything in between, but it gives us a chance to show them that we're
Yeah.
human, that everybody makes mistakes, but we can repair that.
Yes. I'm aggressively
So,
nodding for the listeners who cannot see me. I love that so much. I'm telling you, I asked the universe and God for patience, and I was given a child with ADHD to show me all of the parts that I needed to work on. So
oh,
it's been a 9-year self development journey.
oh, I love that though. I love that. I mean, when things get rough, I mean, I like that way of thinking is that, gosh, this is another opportunity to just practice and
Yeah.
understand, right? And that's really what kids need. We need consistency. We need the safe space to practice. Nobody is born knowing these things, but luckily, executive functioning skills can be taught.
Yes. Yes. Even to 40-year-olds.
Yes. Yes, I am just now in my sleep era. I don't know how many times I have told families sleep is so important. That's one of the things we teach in our class. Sleep is
Mm,
so important. And yet I was so bad with my own sleep. And I was honest with the kids, like that is something that I'm working on. I'm
yeah.
getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep myself, which is terrible for my brain. But
Mm.
like now that I'm 50, I'm like, I cannot wait to get into bed every night. I am prioritizing sleep finally. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So now I want to give you a chance to showcase your expertise in your programs. I am on your mailing list, and we will definitely put that in the show notes. But I want you to talk about your programs, of course, Teach Me ADHD, but also you host a lot of workshops and resources, and I want you to talk about those if you do
Yes,
not mind.
of course. Thank you for the opportunity. So, Teach Me ADHD is kind of my signature course, and it's a course that I develop for kids and families to take together, which is very unusual. I mean, I think there are lots of things out there like OutSchool, and there's parenting workshops about ADHD, but there's not been a class that kids and parents take together about ADHD, which I think is so important because at time of diagnosis or when we need to recalibrate, it's got to be as a team, right? So you got to
Yeah.
do it together. No telephone tag games of like, oh, I heard this or whatever. If you're in the room together learning, it just makes it much more, important and like fun, right? So Teach
Yeah.
Me ADHD is for kids with a diagnosis of ADHD, ages 8 to 12, to take with their parents. Because it's on Zoom and because I created it during COVID time and remote learning was like a big traumatic experience for many of us families, I decided that we needed to make it fun. So when you join the All Deeds Help Detective Agency. You and your child become junior and senior detectives. And again, every week you get top secret missions to work on in between sessions. And then you have a weekly deed to work on because we're at the All Deeds Help Detective Agency. Um, Deeds to work on to strengthen the neural pathways in your brain and to strengthen those connections. So we learn something every week to work on.
Mm.
So it's a lot of fun. Families, take pictures of the evidence that they've done their missions and send it into headquarters for feedback. That class is 8 weeks in length. Each session is 75 minutes, and we cover everything there is to know about ADHD. As a doctor, obviously, I do prescribe medication, but it's not the be all end all. And we don't talk about meds in that course until session 6.
Mm.
It's not a deep dive into it, but we talk about, well, if a doctor were to recommend that, that's why. But everything else about the class is about everything else kids can start doing now. So we talk about the importance of sleep and why we're eating right, because we got to fuel not just our bodies, but our brains, right? We talk about physical activity. We introduce executive function skills and we work on organization and planning and all these other things. So we're doing all the things, not just talking about medicine, because that's
Mm.
just a small component. It's just one tool in the toolbox. And
Yeah.
oftentimes parents are coming to me and they're like, I don't necessarily want my kid on medicine, or I don't want them on medicine long term. And I get that. But if I'm doing my job correctly, I want to make sure kids understand the language, the verbiage, the tools, and the knowledge, and feel empowered enough at the end of that class to be able, when they're talking to their doctor or their teacher or their parent or their therapist or their tutor, like what they need.
Mm.
And at the end of that class, they will have that ability and understand their brain enough to be able to be active participants, so that way as they get older, they can advocate for what they need, right? So we want them to be an active participant, and that's what this class sets you up to be. And it's fun. It's with 11 other families at any one time. So kids get to meet other kids. Oftentimes kids don't go up to each other and say, "Hey, I got ADHD, do you?" They
Yeah.
don't do that, right? So, but in this space, they meet other kids who are enrolled, who have ADHD, and they get to be like, "Hey, huh?" And they listen to, and they see what other kids are, and they realize they're not alone you know
Mm.
and then the parents get to see other parents. Sometimes parents are like, "Oh, you gotta sit still, stop talking," but other kids are doing it and it's totally fine, because you gotta
Yes.
get up and move around. So and what's fun is that it's taken at the in your comfort of your own home, right? So kids can be in their jammies, they can be eating, they can be showing me their pets, they can be showing me their toys. We want them to be comfortable, right?
Yes.
And it's not just me lecturing. It's not that at all. Like, it is so interactive. It's so fun. A lot of the kids want to be there and they come back week after week, so it's a lot of fun. So that's the Teach Me ADHD signature course, and we're actually enrolling. And I had mentioned to Danielle that if you are part of her community, we can give you guys a special discount for $100 off. So there's that. And we offer that class in January and in September every year. And I have wonderful other physicians, pediatricians who are offering it too. It's not just me now, but I found 3 wonderful other physicians who are just as dedicated and want to offer this class. So you'll either see me, Dr. Diltz, Dr. Stuppy, or Dr. Cohen. So.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then for our teenagers, we have a director's cut version, which Dr. Stuppy and I help co-create. Similar thing, but parents aren't necessarily sitting next to their kid because at that age, teens are kind of individuating. They want to kind of
Yeah.
have their privacy. So instead of a detective theme, we have a director's cut, a theater theme. So parents become stage managers. They're waiting in the wings. So you'll get information after each class. Don't worry, you'll stay involved, but it's a 90-minute session, and there's 10 different sessions. You don't have to register for all. You can kind of pick and choose, but we offer it each session twice a year because we know teens schedules are often really busy. And so, but we cover the gamut there, for anxiety and mindfulness and medicines and, stress and anxiety, and depression, all of the things, time management, sensitivity, rejection, all of those things, how to handle those emotions. And then for our smallest and youngest kids, 4 to 7, actually, my good friend Amy, who works with me at headquarters, she is a Montessori trained educator, but she also helps me in my own private practice here in Indiana. She's also a kids yoga instructor. So we've now started offering mini sleuths yoga classes for 4 to 7 year olds that Amy herself leads, and it's based on children's books around mindfulness and movement and understanding ADHD. Those are only in person currently here in Indiana, here in my clinic, but we're kind of exploring how we can get that out there. And then also we have my ADHD sleuths community. So for anybody who enrolls in any of the Teach Me ADHD class, you'll get 6 months of access to our community here, which includes access to my weekly podcast, member live events once a month during the school year that are recorded and in your library. And then also coffee chat hours. So twice a month coaching with me, and then often the other physicians come on too. So that's just for parents to kind of come and ask questions. So we try to do a lot of support for our families. We know that one size does not fit all, and we all are different learnings. We all have different learning styles. So, for families who can't make the Teach Me ADHD class work, given the time zone or whatever, we also have an on-demand version too. So you can always purchase the pre-recorded videos of me doing it. You can get your supply box, but then I would encourage those families to definitely make use of the coffee chats and things so that you get the support that you need from us as well.
I love that so much. You cover all ages and you take care of the parents. And I love the on demand aspect because sometimes ADHD lives are chaotic. Would you like to share a website or socials?
Yes. So my website is letstalkkidshealth.org. Now, I've been told you have to actually type in HTTPS and then the colon forward, not just Let's Talk Kids Health, because it'll redirect to an old website that I had, and I don't know how to fix that yet.
Oh,
It's been years,
no.
and I've been trying to troubleshoot this. So if you look at it and it's purple, you're at the right spot. If it's orange, not the right spot, and put in the HTTPS in front of it. But it's all there, letstalkkidshealth.org. And then my socials on Facebook and Instagram, it's also letstalkkidshealth.org. I have a YouTube channel. It's under my name, Nerissa Bauer, Bauer. And I often host like roundtable events. It's usually 2 or 3 times a year, and those are just streamed on all my social media platforms. I'll often have a topic like this last one that we did in October in honor of ADHD Awareness Month was with 6 other guests, and we were talking about ADHD in women. So all of them have ADHD and all in different fields. And so we wanted to kind of showcase our own journeys, but also like important information about that. And roundtable events are really fun because you can kind of like clue in and listen in, but if you have a question, you just type it in and we'll answer it in real time. So it's a lot of
Mm,
fun. Those are great.
very nice.
And those are free.
Oh, wonderful.
Mhm.
Dr. Bauer, I could do this all day. I really could, but I want to be respectful of your time. You are a busy, busy woman. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. Is there anything you would like to leave us with today?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity again for allowing me to speak today to you and your community. It was an absolute pleasure. I just want to just let you know that ADHD, like you said, is we're all a work in progress, and the biggest thing that I want to share to families is that, kids may have a lot of negative ideas in their head about ADHD, about who they are, and they may think having ADHD is bad. But, I think when we get to that point, or if you're noticing those signs, like please bring them into their doctor, their pediatrician, to at least start the conversation. If the pediatrician themselves doesn't feel comfortable making a diagnosis, you can ask for a referral. It's really important to engage in that conversation early and often. I can't tell you, again, thinking about my own story about how late I was when I was diagnosed. I mean, I think it's so important to help get your child the proper identification and the support they need as early as you can. Um, and if you and just getting the diagnosis of ADHD doesn't mean you have to rush to do medicine. I mean, I think that's a big thing that parents struggle with. Like they're like, gosh, I kind of think there's something here, but I don't want to see a doctor because then they're going to ask about medicine. I don't know how I feel about that. And I honor that. I honor that. And many of my colleagues do too. I mean, I just want you to know there's so much that we can do for ADHD, but the most important is knowledge and education so that everybody at the table feels comfortable. And then we can talk about the layers, right? But at the end of the day, like I tell kids, yes, medicine can help. It's kind of like gas for your car. You gotta put gas in the car, but at the end of the day, if you just put gas in the car, it's not going to go. It needs the driver, and that's you,
Yeah.
right? So just taking a medicine isn't going to automatically cure things. However, you can get in a car without gas and it still won't go, right? So there is a role for medication, and that's a whole other conversation. However, there's so much more to that conversation because pills don't teach skills.
Hmm.
And that's why kids need to understand. Because at some point, if like I can tell you, I've medicated kids as early as 4, 5, 6 because symptoms are the way they are. We need to keep them safe. But come 11, 12, 13, a lot of those kids say, I don't want to be on medicine anymore. I'm like, okay, I understand. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do without it, but let's also see what else we need to be doing. And if I didn't do my job right, I mean, that's why I do this course because I want the kids to know they can say that they need to be moving their body, they need to be sleeping well, they need to be eating well, they need to be moderating their screen time. They got to be doing all the other things then if they don't want to be on medicine. But like nobody's going to hold them down to force them to take medicine,
Yeah.
right? Medicine is not intended to change you, it's supposed to help you, right? So we have to honor our kids. We have to honor our parents. We need to help make sure everybody's on the same page. And again, that's kind of the cornerstone of everything that I do is just trying to make sure everybody at the table understands what they need so that we can all move forward together.
Yeah. I love that so much. Such a good note to end on. And I am completely stealing pills do not teach skills.
Please do. I mean,
I
that is so
totally
important.
am. Dr. Bauer, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to come back and do this again. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.